What's up, guys? Here are my predictions for UFC 220 coming up this weekend. It's very top heavy. I'm going to have to say very, very top heavy. The last two fights are really the big fights of the card. Every other fight, I'm looking to get surprised by some of these fights, though. Because you do have guys like Shane Burgos, you have guys like Rob Font versus Thomas Almeida. That's actually a really good fight. And you got some other young talent coming up. You got the rematch with Hamasi and Razak Al Hassan. So there's some things to really look out for in this card. Before I give my predictions, I highly encourage you guys to watch my breakdown of Stipe Miocic and Francis Ngannou. I made two different videos specifically breaking down both of their games coming into this fight. If you want more of an in-depth analysis on their game and what they bring into this fight. I'm actually going to start with Thomas Almeida versus Rob Font. Now, this is an interesting fight. It should be a really fun fight to watch. You got two strikers. Thomas Almeida, more of a Muay Thai kind of a fighter. Young fighter, but a lot of experience, a lot of fights. He's been hurt in his career, though. He's an offense fighter. That's really what he is. His defense is not too great, although he does keep his hands up and everything, but he barely moves. Like, he has his hands up, and you can't hit him through his hands, but those openings down the middle and around the side are always there no matter where his feet are moving. He never moves his head or anything. So if you're a precise striker, you can time your shots pretty well, you can get Thomas Almeida pretty easily. But his offense is what to be worried about. I mean, he hits hard for a bantamweight. He's a big guy, too, for this weight class. Excellent kicks. He eat those flying knees out there and everything like that. Check left hooks. He loves that check left hook. Very fundamental striking, but very dynamic and quick. Everything he throws is meant to hurt the opponent. His chin doesn't seem to be the best. He does get hurt a lot in his fights. He really gets hit a lot by the left hook and the straight shots down the middle. So that's going to be tough for him against Rob Font. His grappling hasn't really been shown too much, although he has shown some good takedown defense. But we do go to Rob Font, and Rob Font is also a striker. Rob Font has some really good boxing. He sticks to his fundamentals, although he moves quite a bit. He's a bit long, too, and he fights really long. He loves to stick that jab on the opponent. He's good with the right hand, with the overhand right or the right straight, and he likes to follow up with shots a lot. And this can play very well against Thomas Almeida, who doesn't really do too well on the back foot. But Rob Font likes to back up sometimes. So his attacks are pressuring, but everything else, he likes to scale the cage. He likes to move out on the opponent a lot and pump out the jab and get into more of a boxing rhythm. I don't see him taking down Thomas Almeida at all. I don't see Thomas Almeida trying to take him down either, so I think it's going to be a striking match. So my prediction for the fight, I'm going to go with Thomas Almeida. I think he's going to be able to pressure Rob Font, and I think his offense might be a little bit too much. He's going to have to watch out from the boxing, though. That check left hook and that straight right hand of Rob Font can be a huge factor in this fight for him. So I'm going to go with Almeida, and I'm going to go by a second or third round TKO. Although Rob Font is really tough, so I wouldn't be surprised if this goes the distance. And then we go to Kelvin Kattar, I think that's how you pronounce his name, versus Shane Burgos. Now, this is a fight a lot of people are just overlooking. Don't overlook this fight at all. Because this fight, I believe there's going to be a standout moment in this fight. Either the fight's going to be excellent or there's going to be a pretty good performance. These are two huge featherweights. I mean, both standing at 5'11". Burgos having a 75-inch reach. I mean, this guy, in terms of height and reach, this is a guy that would belong in welterweight. And we go to Kelvin. Kelvin's more of a striker, although he does have some good ground skills. But in his last fight against Andre Fili, which was a really good performance by him, he showed some really good striking, some fluid striking, really good with his movement. No wasted movements. Very defensive, though. Everything is more defensive than anything. He likes to counter the opponent. He's fast with his strikes, but his retractions aren't the greatest. When he pumps out that jab at the opponent, he always drops it. And that's going to be scary against a guy like Shane Burgos. He's really good with his kicks. He fights very well in both southpaw and orthodox. He's more kick-heavy in the southpaw position, but he's really good timing that right hand of his, especially with the uppercut and the right straight. And he really bolts in at you when he finds those openings. But he likes to stand back a little bit. Yet he's also really good at not getting pressure too heavily to the point where he's against the cage. When he's somewhere in that area, he's always giving feints, always pumping jabs, or doing something to get you to back up so he doesn't get pressure too much. And then you go to Shane Burgos. Now, Shane Burgos is a guy to look out for. This guy has excellent boxing. He has some of the best boxing skills and technique I have seen in this whole division. Extremely long, and he uses that reach to great effect. Everything when it comes to boxing, he has it down to a T. His jab is excellent, retracting it. He's excellent at pulling punches after throwing his own. His slipping ability is insane. Just slightly getting out of the range of the punches, slipping on the outside or the inside of the punches, ripping up shots. He has pretty big power as well, and his kicking game is not something to look over either. I would think Kelvin would try to probably take him down, but that's going to be a hard thing. Burgos is a really well-rounded fighter, more of a sprawl and brawl. He doesn't like to go to the ground too much, but he has the takedown defense skills to actually thwart off any of those takedowns. So my prediction for the fight, I'm going to go with Shane Burgos. I'm going to go probably by a decision because I think Kelvin's pretty tough. I think Kelvin's going to get tagged a little bit too much throughout the fight, but I think Burgos is going to really show a really good performance. And then we go to the fights everybody's looking for. Daniel Cormier versus Vulcanized, which is the co-main event. This is a pretty unexpected fight. It's a hard fight to really call because Volkan hasn't been in the UFC too long. He's only had 3 fights in the UFC, and 2 of them have been finished in seconds. The only fight that we have in the UFC, or at least Volkan fighting a top-ranked fighter for a long extended time, was his first fight against OSP. But he didn't really perform the way he did in these other 2 fights, which show probably the UFC debut, the maybe octagon jitters or whatever. But you got Daniel Cormier, who's one of the best wrestlers in all of the UFC. Very short fighter for the division. He doesn't have the biggest power, but he does have some power to give some caution to the opponent, but it's really those takedowns. Every takedown in the book. He's good with the single legs, he's good with the high crotch, good with the trips and the clinch, good with the double. Every single takedown you could think of, he is almost a master at. Not only offensively, but defensively. I doubt Volkan Oezdemir is going to try to take Daniel Cormier down. But we've seen some crazy thing. I mean, Gustafsson took down Daniel Cormier, so you never know. But Cormier is more of a boxer, although he does throw some leg kicks. He throws some high kicks at times, but they're not too flexible. I mean, throwing that at a tall fighter like Volkan and a kickboxer in Volkan is going to be dangerous. But he's good at getting in the distance. He walks the opponent down, doesn't cut off the opponent at all almost. Pumps out that jab, but he almost jumps with it. Jumps with his body behind it to cover the distance, and he likes coming with the uppercut, usually the right uppercut, or the right overhand, especially on a tall fighter like Volkan. His dirty boxing is probably the best in the whole division. He's excellent with those uppercuts in the clinch. You've seen that against Jones and Gustafsson, and they really couldn't do anything to him in those areas. And he does have the option to trip the opponent from that. On the ground is where Daniel Cormier really excels at. I mean, his pressure, he's really heavy on top. He's excellent at transitioning. He lands some good ground and pound as well if you give him space, and he's really good at snatching the back. If you give him that opening, he'll take that back really quick, faster than you think he will. He's really good at working from half guard though, and he tries to get into side control usually. And then you go to Volkan Oezdemir. Volkan is more of a kickboxer. He has some insane power. It's not like destructive power like you see Anthony Johnson, but it's weird power. It's like he touches you and you just fall. It's almost like the quote-unquote touch of death that they give some fighters. He's really good with the blitzing. He's a big fighter. So that reach is going to play a factor in this fight, but that blitzing style might not work against Daniel Cormier from those takedowns. This is the first guy he's going to fight that has this kind of wrestling, so those blitz with the punches are going to be a little ill-advised if he commits too much with it, but what you do see from Volkan, he's really good at retracting that blitz. He throws those punches, but he's really good at cutting off at an angle away from the opponent. And he has some powerful kicks. I mean, he's good with all kind of kicks. Head kicks, body kicks, like he's good with it all. Where he seems to have an advantage over almost everybody, and it's somewhere that Daniel Cormier likes to stay in, is the clinch. And that is with the dirty boxing. That is where we've seen his weird power play. Daniel Cormier loves that clinch. He loves the dirty boxing. He loves that single collar. That is probably an area and a position he wants nothing to do with against Volkan. Because as we've seen, Volkan could just hit you one time in that space. The whole trajectory of the fight could change. He could generate a lot of power in that short range. And he's really good at controlling the opponent too. He's really good at not letting them attack him. He's good with tying up the arms, going for the head position, and everything in that space. So that goes into my prediction. My prediction for the fight, I'm going to go with Daniel Cormier. I think the wrestling might be too much, although it's almost like an enigma. We don't really know how good Volkan's takedown defense is. But I would have to think it probably won't be enough to stop Cormier. So I think Cormier's going to win by I'll say 3rd or 4th round submission. I don't know where Volkan's cardio is at either. It's almost the same thing with Ngannou that I'm going to talk about later. And then we go to the main event, and this is the fight everybody's looking for. I mean, this is one of the biggest fights in heavyweight history. This is the most excited heavyweight fight for me ever. So you got Stipe Miocic versus Francis Ngannou, and this is a high stakes fight. You got Stipe, who I've been saying for a while. Stipe, if he wins this fight, I say he's the greatest of all time. Maybe some will disagree. Some people say Fedor still. I don't know how people say Kane. I mean, Kane's only, if you really look at who Kane beat, he beat pretty much 1, maybe 2 elite fighters, right? He beat one of them twice. So, but you got Stipe, who's beating everybody, right? He's beating everybody, and he break the record that Kane couldn't do. But if he loses, he has a lot to lose in this fight as well. being the champion and being so highly regarded. Francis Ngannou, if he wins, he might be one of the biggest stars in the UFC. So that's a lot to gain from him. Coming 5 years ago, he was homeless. So to be from homeless 5 years ago to now possibly being one of the biggest UFC stars, it's a big deal for him. But if he loses, this momentum gets killed quick. You got Stipe Miocic, who's more of a wrestle boxer. A lot of people say he's well-rounded, but I've only really seen offensive wrestling and boxing. That's really all you see from him. He throws some leg kicks sometimes. He throws almost no body or head kicks. But his boxing is excellent on the feet. He's offensively, defensively very well-versed in that area. I made a breakdown of these two. Specifically, I go really deep into their games. And Stipe is really good at pulling on punches at all times. And he keeps a lot of weight on the back foot, which is almost a defensive stance. But he shifts that momentum forward for his punching. He wants to connect with that right hand, so he'll throw the left hook or the jab into the right hand. And he likes to jump with the hooks when he's shifting momentum when he backs you up. He likes to go to the left, go to the right, and jump with his punches. Some people call it the gazelle punch. He has an excellent jab, excellent right hand, very basic fundamentals. He's almost a master at the fundamentals in boxing. But the problem with his boxing is he doesn't move off the center line that much. He is pretty good at slipping on the outside of punches and like returning with the right hand, but normally you don't see him move his head, which is why you saw him get caught by Overeem, you saw him get caught by Stefan Struve, you saw him get caught many times for not moving his head out of the way. And it's really these straight shots. He's good at leaning away from hooks and stuff, but it's the straight long punches that catch him. And that's a problem because Ngannou has a longer reach than Overeem does. And then you can go to the wrestling. Now wrestling, he doesn't normally go this route, but I guarantee he'll go that route in this fight. He's really good at ducking under punches and going for the single leg. The single leg is really what he likes to go for, and that long stance of Ngannou that he has developed plays into that single leg game. But Ngannou has really good footwork, so it's going to be tricky. And on top, Stipe is heavy and powerful. I mean, his ground and pound is some of the best in the division. It's also really precise striking. Really good at catching the chin of the opponent, even on the ground. He's good at stacking on top of you. He's good at keeping a really top-heavy pressure. But he doesn't transition too much. He'll stay in your guard, and he'll just pound you from there. And then we go to Francis Ngannou. And Ngannou is more of an athletic striker, I would say. Although he has a lot of questions going into this fight, and a lot of questions are going to be answered, hopefully, if it doesn't end right away in striking. Ngannou is more of a boxer as well, although he will throw some more varied strikes. He has some powerful leg kicks, and those can be a factor in this fight. If you look at his early days before the UFC, he threw a lot of leg kicks. Dropped some people with them too. I mean, he can throw them, and he's only developed them. He's really good at the boxing, long fighter. He's one of the longest fighters in this division. Only guy longer than him is Stefan Struve, who has like a 7-inch height advantage over him. He's really good with the jabs, really good with a straight right hand. He's good with the check left hook and the right uppercut. The left uppercut is the one he's famous for, though. Knocked out 2 guys with that. Shifting his momentum a certain way, swinging back the back foot, and coming up with the uppercut is usually the way he likes to go. And he keeps that long stance on you, and he has a really deceptive movement. It looks like he's going to commit at you. Even his fakes look like he's going to commit at you. And his movement is really good at cutting the opponent off and zoning them in a certain area. So if he's the pressuring fighter, he can move out on an angle and looks like he's running into the cage, and he'll just set you up for the right hand. And Ngannou's pulling back motion in striking distance is excellent. His ability to rock forward and back on you, and when he rocks back at you, your punch will just slightly miss and you're right in distance for his counters. You saw that in the Andrei Arlovski fight. I covered this in my breakdown. When he's done throwing those strikes, that left uppercut, that right uppercut, notice how fast he retracts and rebounds to continue. After those devastating punches, there's very little retraction time on those punches, and he's ready to go right away. And that's a scary thing. So even if he misses his punches, it's not like he's wide open. He's going to rebound and retract them really quickly. So it's a very small window. And Francis Ngannou has actually won 3 rounds in that loss of his. And it was a pretty action-packed fight. If you actually go back and watch it, it's actually a really good fight to watch. It's exciting. 3 rounds, and he looked pretty good for all 3 rounds. 3rd round, he looked a little tired, and he was taken down in that fight. And the guy just kept coming at him, and pressuring him heavily. And that was one of his first fights, so it really showed even back then he's able to go 3 rounds. I do not question his cardio too much. If he can go 3 rounds, I don't even think he's going to go past the second. So him actually going 3 rounds back then, I think is going to be a good thing for him in this fight. I don't think it's too much to be wondering about. Now, I don't know where his chin's at. I don't really know too much about his takedown defense. He has fought Curtis Blades, and he fended off the takedowns pretty well. He got taken down a couple times, but he was instantly able to pop back up against a JUCO champion like Curtis Blades, a really strong and big fighter too, but he's not Stipe Miocic. His takedown defense looks good against Curtis Blades, and that was a while ago. You see it against Overeem. Overeem is supposed to be a good grappler as well. He tried to take down Ngannou and then clinch up with him against the cage. Ngannou was just way too strong. He's just way too strong. He just drove in the underhook, threw him against the cage, And you saw Overeem was like, okay, I'm not going here again. That strength of Ngannou can play a big factor against Stipe. Stipe's a strong guy too, but I don't see anyone stronger than Ngannou yet. So that strength can possibly, it's a possibility, trump some of the technique and skill of Stipe. And we saw that in Anthony Hamilton fight. Anthony Hamilton pressured him against the cage and got caught in a Kimura by pure strength, a strongman submission. Francis will go for those submissions. He's a very dangerous fighter in all areas. Maybe not the most skilled and technical because we don't really know yet, but very dangerous. So my prediction for the fight, this is a tough fight to call. This is a really, really tough fight to call. Probably the toughest fight to call in the whole card. But I'm going to go with Francis Ngannou. I'm actually going to go by a first round knockout. The reason for that is Stipe, I don't think he's going to see those straight punches coming at him, and I think he's going to be drawn into Ngannou's range. I think Stipe's footwork is not going to be quick enough, and I don't think he's going to be able to cut off Ngannou. I think Ngannou is going to actually be the one pressuring Stipe in the beginning, which could be very problematic for Stipe because Stipe is usually the one that wants to pressure the opponent. And now you will say, but Stipe does have those counter shots, like you saw against Verdum and you saw against Mark Hunt and Junior Dos Santos in the first fight. There's a difference there. Stipe had the reach advantage over all those guys. Ngannou has a reach advantage over him. And the only time we've seen him fight a guy with a reach advantage over him and him actually going backwards and not being effective, could not land those shots, and could not get away from the straight punches from that reach, was Stefan Struve. That fight was a while ago, and he did get better. But Stefan Struve is nowhere near, at this point, nowhere near as technical or as fast or as precise as Francis Ngannou is. I don't think he's going to be able to get away from the shots of Ngannou, and Ngannou's going to throw those bombs, and he's going to retract them really quickly. Now you'll think, okay, but he can go under for the takedowns, like against Mark Hunt. That's the prime example, right? Notice the thing about Mark Hunt, though. Mark Hunt has a 72-inch reach. Most of the time when Stipe took him down was as counters. He would single leg counter him under those looping, lunging shots of Mark Hunt. And if Mark Hunt's going to throw a lunging shot, Stipe is definitely going to be in range for the takedown. He has pretty much a foot reach disadvantage on Ngannou, right? Ngannou's going to throw those lunging shots, and he's not going to be in that same distance. He's still going to be far. And Stipe is going to have to enter, and that's going to be scary. You know Francis Ngannou's footwork of creating angles on the opponent. It's going to be very dangerous for Stipe on that more basic approach, basic footwork to get in on Francis. Because Francis is really good at cutting the angles. You've seen it even the first exchange against Overeem. Overeem went to go throw that lunging left overhand, right? Why did it not land? And why did it look so sloppy? It was a sloppy punch, but it looked even more sloppy because it didn't land. And look at the angle Francis took. Francis stepped right on the outside, right away from the punch at his reach, at his range. Overeem's punch just went right in front of him, right in front of his face, and Ngannou almost landed the right hand over the top. If that right hand landed, it could have been done right there, knowing how Overeem could take a punch. The big thing I see going for Stipe, if he can take him down, he's going to have an advantage, but I don't think he's going to keep Francis down too much unless he gets Francis tired. Stipe could take the rope-a-dope approach or take it easy for the first couple rounds to test Ngannou's cardio, which is not a bad game plan. But the big thing I see from Stipe, giving him any kind of advantage or chance here, is the lunging and wide shots of Ngannou if he goes that route. And that usually comes if you pressure Ngannou heavily. And he can catch him on the inside of those long range punches, wide range punches, with his straight right hand, his money shot, his big punch. The problem is how he's going to get in that reach, how he's going to get inside. So those are my predictions, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and if you did, make sure to give it a thumbs up, and if you enjoy my content, make sure to subscribe. For my next video, I'm going to break down one of the fights in the card, so be on the lookout for that. And comment below what your guys' predictions are. I'm really curious to see what you guys think, especially for the last two fights. Really interested to see what you guys think as well, because you got two very unknown in many areas in Ngannou and Uzdemir. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.